Today I'm going to tell a little bit about Leuthen, Frederick's Greatest Victory. This is the first game in a system called Drums and Muskets, published by Victory Point Games and designed by Frank Chadwick. Leuthen, Frederick's Greatest Victory. Well, the topic is the Battle of Leuthen. Frederick the Great wasn't feeling so great that winter of 1757 when, after he had faced a string of defeats against the Austrians, he badly needed a victory against the enemies. He launched an attack at Leuthen when he actually ended up having to face a force more or less twice the size of his own, which he did not expect. Yet, nevertheless, still this was his greatest victory. He still managed to win. How did he do so? Well, you're gonna see it in my video. I probably already know it if you're interested in history, but I'm going to show you how that works in this game, how that can be achieved. Now, let me tell a little bit about the game. What you see here is the map of the game and the historical deployment of the battle, which can be a great idea for you to study how the battle went, to get a good sense of the historical development of the events. It is probably a scenario that does not have much replay value for reasons that I will explain soon. Here you have the Austrian units that Frederick is facing, and here you have Frederick's army that is ready to attack. Many of these counters that Frederick is using actually are dummy counters. They have movement value, but not much else. And usually the game is played with the counters face down so that you can bluff about the location of your real units. Here in this case, when you are playing the historical setup, you know where the dummy units are, so I don't see any point in having the units face down. But in the regular game, the units will be face down, and when at the end of movement, units are adjacent to one another, then you reveal them, and then the dummy counters will be eliminated. Here, in any case, Frederick has his main force of attack concentrated here, and what happened historically is that indeed these dummy units managed to fool the enemies into believing that the attack would come from this direction, as Frederick was marching in this position, hiding behind these hills, and then he attacked in full force this flank here, causing a lot of damage here, and that caused a cascading effect on the morale of the opponent. As you can see, I don't know how many times you can play this the scenario here with this setup, but it is a great picture of what happened there. I played the battle this way, and it did develop along historical lines. It was fun. To give replay value to the game, what you can do, and what the rulebook suggests to do, is of course to change the setup. This side has units divided in specific corps that can be mixed and matched, meaning you can put a corps here and that a corps there, but each group has to remain together with the others. You cannot mix together units from different formations. Very different from Frederick, that has complete freedom. You can mix and match units from any group with dummies. You could have attacks that come from a very stretched line with dummies alternating actual units. You can have a concentrated attack coming from who knows where. And at that point, even if you do place your concentrated attack here, you're not sure what type of units you're going to face here. So I see how that would create a replay value for the game. The game uses cards. Each player has an individual deck of cards, a maximum hand of cards, and cards have specific effects. They can be played in different times during a turn. It just depends on the effect. Combat effects, movement effects, of course, they apply in different parts of the turn. In this game, the Prussians have a larger hand size. That means that they have an advantage there too. Their tactical superiority is mirrored also in their extra ability to draw cards and to use cards, because of course those cards are good. They give you tactical advantages. Now, Each turn starts with the first player turn. First the player moves. In this game, orientation is important. The game is divided, well, the board is divided in hexes, as you can see, and a unit can face a hex side or can face a corner, like that. At the beginning of movement, a unit can move freely by 60 degrees, that is from hex side to hex side, or by 30 degrees from edge to from hex side to corner, or vice versa, from corner to edge. What is important is that after that free reorientation, you can move your unit, but only units that are facing a corner can move. I couldn't figure out at the beginning why that happened. I have an hypothesis. Because units that are facing a hex side have 3 front hexes, that means 3 zones of control, and 3 flank hexes. Units that are facing a corner have 2 front hexes, that means 2 zones of control too, but 4 flank hexes. And when you attack 3 flank, the opponent has a bonus. So I assume, but I'm not 100% sure, that the idea is that this simulates the fact that when you're moving, your flanks are more exposed, it is easier for the opponent to attack you with a bonus, you're more exposed to enemy attacks. I imagine that is what this is simulating. In any case, you move up to your full movement allowance, which is the number printed on the right on the counter of the unit. Different costs will apply depending on terrain, and well, you can move any and all of your units, including the dummies. The dummies, when still face down and the opponent doesn't know what they are, have zones of control. When you're playing solitaire, or in this case with the historical setup, the opponent knows where they are, the dummies are much less useful and exciting than in the bluffing situations that you have with the counters face down, but the dummies still have zones of control, so you can still use them to slow down the opponent, at least that. There are 3 types of units in the game, well, 4 if you also count dummies, but 3 types of real combat units: light infantry, regular infantry, and cavalry. By the way, I said earlier that terrain modifies movement costs, but a cool thing is that different types of terrain will modify the costs for different units in different ways. For example, it is more expensive for regular infantry and cavalry to move across woods than it is for light infantry. At the end of movement, the active player can attack adjacent units. You can combine your several of your units in a single attack. Units can only attack enemies that are in their zone of control. Also, I didn't mention this, but during movement, you have to end your movement when you enter the zone of control of an opponent. In any case, you total the strength value, the strength points of all of the attacking units, and that is the number on the left. You take into account modifiers such as flank attacks, you got a bonus if you're attacking 3 flank, terrain effects, cards can be played, and then artillery. Some units have this little symbol here. That means that they have an artillery unit attached with a combat strength of 1. A unit can use that point to help itself in combat, so that unit could use that artillery to increase this number here from 3 to 4, or actually that can be used to support an adjacent unit, an adjacent friendly unit. In this case, suppose these are 2 adjacent axes, then this unit could attack with a 3, land this to this unit, and now this unit is attacking with a 3. The unit lands that to an adjacent friendly unit. It doesn't matter where the opponent is, the orientation of the opponent, the orientation of the adjacent friendly unit. You can still land at that point. There are some restrictions. For example, if the unit with the artillery piece is being attacked, then that unit is going to use the artillery to defend itself, and not going to let other friend borrow that artillery bonus there. You total the combat strength of the attacker. You total the combat strength on the defender, again taking into account all modifiers. You subtract the defender's strength from that of the attacker, and this way you compute the combat differential. That will tell you the column that you are going to use. You roll 1d6 and you look at the effect. The effect may be that defender retreats, attacker retreats, or no effect. Yes, the only result, actual result, is one of the two sides retreating, but every time that the unit retreats, it also has to take a morale test. That means that you roll 1d6 and you need to roll equal to or less than your morale point, that your level of morale, which is the number printed in the yellow there. If you fail that, then you are routed, you cannot move, you cannot attack, your morale is reduced by 2 to rally, and there is a phase in the game in which you can try to rally your units. Actually, during that phase, one of your units that is routed is rallied for free, and the other units have to roll for morale. However, when you rally, you don't go back to your pristine state. You don't just remove the routed marker, you flip it, and the unit now is shaken. That shaken marker can never be removed. As you can see, a shaken unit loses its artillery if it has one, -1 combat strength, -1 morale. And this is really what is key. You route enemy units, and then enemy units that are routed are destroyed when are attacked by opponents. And there are other ways in which routed units or retreating units can get in trouble. For example, if they move through or if they enter an enemy zone of control. Actually, this is very important. You place your units around the opponent, then you attack the opponent frontally. The opponent is forced to retreat. Boom. Bad stuff happens to the opponent. But not only do you take a morale test, roll a die, and that's it. As you can see, modifiers apply. Modifiers that will come from the combat table and modifiers that come from the tactical situation. This is really neat because there's a lot of this built in here. In the designer's notes, for example, the author says that he didn't want to have a specific rule for cavalry retreating in front of attacking infantry before the attack, and so he just built that into this bonus here, that a cavalry that is defeated by a non-cavalry unit or by non-cavalry units only has a +2 in morale. That means that there is a specific rule that says when infantry is attacking cavalry, the cavalry can move away, but if that cavalry retreats, it is much less likely that the cavalry will suffer damage. Each time that a non-dummy unit is routed or eliminated, you move the morale marker of the group that the unit belongs to down by 1 box in the morale track. That also means that a unit may reduce the morale of its group by 2 points, once when the unit is routed and the other one when the unit is later eliminated. When the morale of a group goes down to 0, that group is demoralized. You remove from the game all of the units from that group that are shaken or routed and that are still on the board. Well, they're not on the board anymore now. All of the steady units from that group become shaken, and all other groups in that army also lose 1 point of morale. That means that actually this may create a cascading effect, and you may have groups becoming demoralized one after the other. Demoralizing enemy groups is one of the main ways in which you can win this game. In fact, in the standard game, well, in the standard rules that apply to all games in the system, a player wins immediately if at the end of a turn during the administrative phase, the opponent has the majority of his formations demoralized and the other player doesn't, then the other player is the winner. and then specific games in the system may also add other victory conditions. This is a system, and this is a game in the system that is a simple game, yes, but it doesn't feel all that simplistic. It feels economic. When you read the designer's notes, in which the designer tells you what he tried to do with the design, and then you realize how the game works and you compare the two things, I would say that the designer was pretty successful here. The designer did manage to pack a good amount of detail in such an economic, minimalistic system. Did manage to tell your story, to paint a painting. Sure that the brush strokes are a little wide, but the painting emerges, the narrative develops, and it is a narrative that is fun to see in the making, to see in the development. Replay value, I do not know that you'll be able to play with the historical setup too often or too many times. Probably after once or twice you'll be done with that setup, but you have free setup, so you can experiment with a quite large number of what ifs. Even the Austrian side has some ability to experiment with different types of setups, even though with stronger limitations than the Prussians, and the Prussian player can really play a bluffing game by working with real units, strong units, weak units, and dummies. I think that that bluffing factor can make the game fresh, can help the game stay fresh after repeated plays. The game doesn't seem like it could work very well as a solitary game because of the importance of the dummy counters, but I have to tell you that actually it worked better than expected. I did play it that way, and the dummies can still be used to slow down the opponent. For example, in the historical scenario, you can use them to slow down the reinforcements that the Austrian is going to try to bring from the north to reinforce against the powerful attack that comes from the south. They still have a use. They're not completely useless. Again, certainly they will work even better. They will shine even more in the two-player game. In conclusion, this is a simple game, definitely, but it is easy to teach, it is easy to pick up, quick to set up, not many units on the board. It lasts around an hour, a little bit more, a little bit less. It can last much less, by the way, if the Austrian morale goes down quickly. But I would say that around an hour something is a good bet. That means that if you have a 2-hour time slot, you can teach the game to new players, set it up, play it, and put it back in the bag, into the Ziploc bag, and still have time to chat about the game and talk a little bit and maybe set up the next game. So for a word game experience, which is definitely light but entertaining, fun, and with a good sense of historical flavor, well, if you're looking for all these things and under the 2-hour deadline, if you only have 2 hours available or a little bit less, well, then I would say the Leuthen is a good option for you. Definitely a fun game to play.